Hello there, and welcome to the channel. Today I want to talk to you about my journey as a photographer so far. Obviously, like I said, I'm actually a new photographer. Been doing it a bit more seriously for about a year now, and obviously I want to get better at what I do with article photography. So I've started this channel, obviously, to try and sort of force myself to get out there and to put the knowledge I'm sort of picking up from things like YouTube and from other places. For instance, I took a photographic night class, basically learning the fundamentals of photography, getting to know your own camera, learning things like the exposure triangle, compositions like rules of third, and also leading lines and so on like that. And I need to start putting it into practice really and really come to grips with it all to make sure I can get the most out of my photography. So that's why I started this channel. I pretty much understand the fundamentals like the exposure triangle. For instance, I know obviously like you want to try to keep your ISO as low as you can really, because otherwise it will actually basically generate grain in your images. And obviously then you can use things like the shutter speed or the aperture to control the exposure of your photograph. Obviously that can also depend on which lens you're using, because for instance I have a 18 to 140 lens, which obviously has a small aperture of I think it's 3.6, and then obviously goes up to 5.6 I think it is. But I also have a 35mm prime lens, which is again can go anywhere down to 1.8. So obviously with that one I can generate a nice bokeh and stuff like that as well, so I can blur out the background really nicely in images. But obviously still getting used to putting it into practice, whereas a lot of time I go out I start using, well at least trying to use the manual mode, and I actually end up taking photographs but not actually concentrating so much on the settings in my camera. So I may set it up one image but then forget to change things for another, and yes, just getting into that habit of making sure I'm looking at the scene and making sure I'm setting the camera for every scene I'm at. The way I've been trying to get used to things is actually using aperture priority mode, which means obviously I can select my aperture so I know if I want it to be sharp or in focus. I'll set my aperture to a high aperture from about f11 to f16, and if I want to have a blurry background and produce that bokeh effect, I will actually bring it down to obviously on the zoom lens is down to about 3.6, and on my prime lens down to somewhere around about the 2.8 sort of thing, because I find that's actually a nice little sweet spot for the bokeh effect. At least that's what I've done so far. But also I have to keep an eye on things like shutter speed, because obviously if I set my aperture on a certain setting, I need to make sure I look at the shutter speed, because obviously you can only handhold up to probably, I think usually around about 60, 1 over 60 on my camera before I sort of bring camera shake into it. I do have vibration reduction in some of my lenses, but there's no inbuilt stabilization in my camera, so it's really down to the lens. So if I'm using one of my prime lens, I have no stabilization, so it all comes down to how I'm holding the camera and recognizing the fact that maybe I might need to go to a tripod to generate a nice crisp clean image. So basically that's where I am with my photography at the moment, and briefly about my knowledge. I have done a couple of videos, one you'll be seeing after this one, where I actually decided to try and sort of focus more on my composition, and working with my 35mm prime lens, which means it's forcing me to stick to a single focal length throughout the day. So I went around London to some popular photography spots, and tried to get some images there. And if you want to see that, the video will be following this one, I think probably about a week later. And after that, I've also done another video, which is a bit of a rough video because I had a few technical problems regarding the weather. It's decided to sort of rain on and off, and my camera isn't weatherproofed. There's no sort of weather feeling at all. So I was more concerned about trying to check my gear. So you'll see some photographs I took prior to that, and this day I was actually focusing on using the manual mode, trying to get used to that exposure triangle and remembering to change settings and stuff like that, which I did a lot of the time, but I will admit I did forget as well sometimes. And because it rained, obviously I moved my experiment indoors because I was already up in London. Didn't want to waste a day, so I went to a tourist attraction, and that forced me to actually to really think about some of my shots, because obviously my lens I had at the time was from 18 to 140, and obviously what is not the best for low light situations. So I mean I had to sort of crank up the ISO a bit sometimes, and sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, and again you'll see that in the future video. And obviously it is a bit of a crude one, but like I said on the beginning of the channel, I want to start showing people everything, the good, the bad and the ugly, because I want to make sure, well, for one, actually I can actually see my progress as I go, so I can look back at the previous videos and previous photos I took and see if I'm actually making any advancements or improvements. And also, by showing you all these things as well, hopefully you'll be able to give me some hints and tips along the way, or suggestions if you have any. So, as always, thank you for listening. If you do want to see more of my journey, or you have any advice or help you'd like to provide, then please comment below, like and subscribe, and you'll get notified of the videos coming up. And of course, I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you.